Good evening, friends. As a priest who's been appointed by the Church to deal with cases of demonic possession and oppression for over 18 years now, I've come across many stories that remind us of the reality of evil in our world. Tonight, I want to share one such account that I read about in some detailed reports from fellow clergy involved in deliverance ministry out on the West Coast. This is a true story based on real events, though to protect those involved and make it easier for you to follow along, I've assigned random names to the people in it. The actual identities have been kept confidential, as is often the case in these sensitive matters. Let's dive right in without delay. It all began back in 2016 in the bustling city of Los Angeles, California, a place where the glamour of Hollywood meets the everyday struggles of millions and where mental health issues run rampant amid the pressures of fame, fortune, and fast-paced living. Our central figure here is a woman I'll call Sofia Reyes. She was 42 at the time, a licensed psychologist specializing in trauma-related disorders. Sofia was of Filipino descent with long dark hair that she often tied back during sessions and warm, inviting eyes that put her patients at ease. She ran a private practice on Wilshire Boulevard, not far from the upscale neighborhoods of Beverly Hills. Her office was a cozy space filled with soft lighting, comfortable armchairs, and shelves lined with books on cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness techniques, and the latest research in post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, as it's commonly known. Sofia was highly regarded in her field. Patients came to her because she had this remarkable gift for listening, not just hearing words, but truly empathizing, diving deep into the emotional wounds that scarred their souls. She'd helped veterans haunted by war memories, survivors of abuse wrestling with flashbacks, and everyday folks dealing with the aftermath of accidents or losses. Her approach was grounded in science, but she also drew from her strong Catholic faith, though she kept that part subtle in her professional life to respect boundaries. You see, in a city like Los Angeles, where therapy is as common as coffee shops, people often seek healing from human experts first, forgetting that true wholeness comes from God. Sofia lived in a modern home up on Sunset Boulevard, a place with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the twinkling city lights at night. She shared it with her husband, Miguel Reyes, who was 45 and worked as a pediatrician at a local clinic. Miguel had a short, neatly trimmed beard and a gentle demeanor that made him perfect for treating children. He could calm a crying toddler with just a smile and a kind word. They were a devoted couple, married for over 20 years, and their faith was the glue that held everything together. Every Sunday, they'd attend Mass at St. Charles Borromeo Church, a beautiful parish in North Hollywood with its tall steeple and welcoming community. Sofia volunteered there, leading a support group for parishioners dealing with anxiety and depression, blending psychological insights with spiritual encouragement. Miguel taught catechism classes to the youth, sharing stories from the Bible to inspire the next generation. They had 2 children who brought joy to their home. The eldest was their daughter, Isabella, 18 years old, and a freshman at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA for short. Isabella was passionate about psychology, just like her mother, and they'd spend evenings discussing case studies over dinner, debating theories on resilience and recovery. She had her mother's warm eyes and a curiosity that drove her to volunteer at campus mental health events. Then there was their son, Lucas, 14, a lively teenager with a mop of curly hair and a talent for music. He dreamed of becoming a rock musician, spending hours in his room strumming his electric guitar, practicing chords from bands like Foo Fighters or classic rock legends. The family would often gather in the living room for game nights or to watch movies, laughing together and praying before meals. It was a picture of stability in a city that could chew you up if you weren't careful. But as I've learned in my ministry, evil often creeps in when we're least expecting it, especially in places where people are vulnerable, like in the realm of mental health, where the line between psychological distress and spiritual warfare can blur. That's exactly what happened when Sofia took on a new patient named Victor Hale. Victor was 50, a former construction worker who'd survived a horrific car accident on the Interstate 5 freeway a few months earlier. The crash had left him with physical scars, a limp in his right leg, and chronic back pain, but it was the mental toll that brought him to Sofia's door. He described vivid nightmares, a constant sense of being watched, and what he called shadows following him from the side of the wreck. In our Catholic tradition, we know that trauma can open doors to demonic influences if not addressed with prayer and sacraments, but Victor wasn't particularly religious. He was just desperate for relief. Their first session was in early spring, with the California sun filtering through the blinds in Sophia's office. Victor sat across from her, his hands trembling as he recounted the accident, the screech of tires, the impact that totaled his truck, and the eerie feeling that something unseen had caused it all. Sophia listened intently, nodding empathetically, using techniques like grounding exercises to help him stay present. But toward the end of the hour, something unusual happened. Victor's body stiffened, his eyes rolled back slightly, and he began to convulse, not a full seizure, but enough to alarm her. In a whispered voice that didn't sound quite like his own, he muttered, "It will transfer to you." Sophia, ever the professional, chalked it up to a PTSD episode, perhaps a dissociative state triggered by reliving the trauma. She ended the session calmly, prescribed some relaxation techniques, and scheduled a follow-up. That night, back at home, Sophia felt an unusual fatigue wash over her. It wasn't just tiredness from a long day. It was a deep, bone, weary exhaustion that made her collapse into bed earlier than usual. Miguel noticed, asking if she was coming down with something, but she brushed it off as stress. Little did she know, this was the beginning of a transfer, a demonic entity moving from one host to another through the very empathy that made her such a gifted therapist. In my experience as an exorcist, demons like to exploit compassion, using it as a bridge to cross into new victims. The Bible warns us in Ephesians chapter 6 about the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. And here was a modern-day example unfolding in the heart of Los Angeles. As the weeks progressed into summer, Victor's sessions continued, and he seemed to improve remarkably fast. His nightmares lessened, the shadows faded, and he reported feeling lighter, more at peace. Sophia was pleased, attributing it to her methods, but subtly, she began to change. During sessions with other patients, she'd hear faint whispers in her mind, not her own thoughts, but echoes of their inner turmoil. At first, it felt like intuition sharpened to a fine point. She could predict what they'd say next with uncanny accuracy. For instance, with a young actress struggling with anxiety from auditions, Sophia anticipated her fears about rejection before the words left her lips, guiding the conversation to breakthroughs that left the patient amazed. Word spread quickly in the tight-knit therapy community of Los Angeles. Sophia Reyes was becoming a genius in her field, a therapist who could cut through defenses like a hot knife through butter. Patients flocked to her practice. Her waiting list grew from weeks to months, and colleagues at networking events would pull her aside, asking for tips on her technique. She even started charging higher fees, justified by the demand. But behind the success, darker signs emerged. Sophia began having vivid dreams, nightmares, really where thousands of voices overlapped in a cacophony, screaming from a vast abyss. She'd wake up, sweating, her heart pounding, but shake it off as vicarious trauma from her work. Miguel grew concerned, suggesting she take a break or see a colleague for her own therapy, but she insisted she was fine, thriving even. Then came the pivotal session that revealed the true nature of what had entered her. It was a warm afternoon in midsummer, the kind where the Los Angeles heat shimmers off the pavement. Sophia was treating a new patient, a middle-aged man dealing with grief over his wife's passing. As he spoke, Sophia felt a surge within her, a pressure building in her chest. Suddenly, she gripped the arms of her chair, her body trembling uncontrollably. Her mouth opened, and out came not her voice, but a multitude of them, overlapping in a horrifying chorus. "We are legion, for we are many." Those words straight from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5, where Jesus encounters the demon-possessed man in the region of the Gerasenes. In the Bible, legion is a horde of demons, thousands of fallen angels cast out by God for their rebellion, doomed to wander and possess the unwary. Through Sophia, this entity began to speak its origins. It claimed to be a legion of spirits from the abyss, survivors of the great fall described in Revelation, chapter 12, angels who sided with Lucifer and were hurled to earth. They moved from host to host, exploiting moments of deep emotional connection, like the empathy in therapy sessions. Victor's accident had been their entry point into him, perhaps through some unconfessed sin or openness to the occult in his past, though the reports didn't specify. But when Sophia delved into his pain with such profound sympathy, it created a conduit of spiritual transfer. We jumped, the voices hissed, because she opened the door with her heart. Sophia snapped out of it moments later, disoriented and shaken. The patient fled the office in terror, never to return. She sat there alone, staring at her reflection in the window, wondering if she was losing her mind. That evening, she confided in Miguel over dinner, describing it as a stress-induced hallucination. He urged her to see a doctor, and she agreed, booking an appointment with a psychiatrist colleague at UCLA Health, a woman named Rachel Klein, in her mid-50s with a no-nonsense approach to mental health. Rachel ran tests, suggested it might be empathic overload or a form of dissociative identity disorder triggered by overwork. She prescribed some mild anti-anxiety medication and recommended cutting back on patients. But Sophia, buoyed by her growing success, ignored the warnings. The voices in her head quieted during the day, only to return in whispers at night, promising power and insight. She convinced herself it was a breakthrough in her abilities, not a curse. In my line of work, I've seen this pattern countless times. Demons masquerade as gifts, luring people deeper into bondage. Sophia's faith, once strong, began to wane under the weight of her ambition. She attended Mass less frequently, skipping her volunteer group at the church, telling herself she was too busy helping others. Miguel prayed for her silently, sensing something amiss but not yet grasping the spiritual dimension. As summer turned to fall, the changes accelerated. Sophia's empathy evolved into something supernatural. She could literally hear patients' unspoken thoughts, delving into secrets they'd never voiced. One woman came in for depression, and Sophia revealed a hidden affair from years ago, shocking her into tears but leading to what seemed like rapid healing. Another man with anger issues had his childhood abuses laid bare before he mentioned them. Her reputation soared. Articles in local psychology journals praised her as innovative, but the dreams intensified. Visions of a bottomless pit, swarming with shadowy figures, their cries echoing eternally. She'd wake speaking in tongues, not the holy kind from Pentecost, but guttural languages that chilled Miguel to the bone when he overheard. By this point, the entity Legion had fully taken root. It wasn't full possession yet, where the person loses all control, but oppression, a heavy influence that warped her perceptions. In Catholic demonology, we distinguish between these. Oppression is external pressure, possession is internal takeover. Sophia was straddling the line, her free will still intact but eroding. She began incorporating subtle, occult-like practices into her sessions, like guided visualizations that bordered on hypnosis, unknowingly inviting more darkness. Miguel confronted her one night after the kids were asleep. They were in their kitchen, the city lights glowing outside. "Sophia, this isn't you," he said, his voice steady but worried. "You're pushing too hard, and something's off. Let's talk to Father Gonzalez at the church." Father Maria Gonzalez, I'll call him that here, was the pastor at St. Charles Borromeo, a sturdy man in his late 50s with a commanding presence and a voice that could soothe or command as needed. He'd handled a few low-level deliverance cases in his time, nothing major, but enough to recognize signs of the demonic. Sophia laughed it off at first, but deep down, doubt crept in. The next day, she felt a compulsion to read her Bible, flipping to the story of the Gerasene demoniac. As she read Jesus commanding Legion into the pigs, a cold shiver ran through her. For a moment, the voices surged. "Do not send us away." She slammed the book shut, her hands shaking. That was the first crack in her denial. And so, friends, this marks the early stage of a battle that would test Sophia's soul, her family, and her faith. Evil doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It slips in through cracks we ignore. In the next part, we'll see how Legion's influence spread, turning healing into harm. But remember, as St. Paul tells us in Romans 8, nothing can separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus, not even the powers of hell. Stay vigilant, pray daily, and trust in the Church's sacraments. God bless you. Good evening again, friends. Picking up right where we left off in this true account from the Deliverance reports out of Los Angeles, we've seen how Sophia Reyes, our dedicated psychologist, unwittingly opened a door to the demonic through her deep empathy with patient Victor Hale. That transfer of legion marked the start of a subtle infiltration, one that masqueraded as professional success at first. But as fall deepened into the cooler months of 2016, the entity's grip tightened, weaving its chaos into the fabric of her daily life and practice. Remember, demons don't always roar. Sometimes they whisper promises of power, eroding the soul one compromise at a time. By late autumn, Sophia's office on Wilshire Boulevard had transformed from a quiet sanctuary into a buzzing hub. Her calendar was packed solid mornings filled with back-to-back sessions, afternoons spilling over with consultations via phone or video for out-of-town clients drawn by her growing fame. The waiting room, once sparsely occupied, now held a diverse crowd. Hollywood executives battling burnout, young influencers crippled by social media pressures, even a few police officers haunted by on-duty traumas. They'd heard through word of mouth or online forums that Dr. Reyes could read your mind and heal wounds others couldn't touch. Her fees had climbed to $300 per hour, justified by results that seemed miraculous. One patient, a screenwriter in his 30s, plagued by writer's block from childhood neglect, left after just 2 sessions, declaring himself reborn, crediting Sophia's uncanny ability to unearth buried memories without prompting. But let's peel back the veneer of success. What appeared as intuition was Legion's doing, those thousands of fallen spirits granting her glimpses into the hidden recesses of minds. During a session with a middle-aged teacher suffering from panic attacks, Sophia didn't just listen. She heard unspoken echoes, flashes of the woman's guilt over a long-ago affair, details that surfaced in her own thoughts like unbidden radio static. "You've been carrying this secret for 15 years, Sophia said calmly, watching the woman's face drain of color. The teacher hadn't mentioned it, yet there it was, laid bare. Breakthrough, perhaps on the surface, but each revelation fed Legion, strengthening its hold. In my years as an exorcist, I've witnessed how demons thrive on division, exposing sins not to heal, but to amplify shame and isolation. At home, the changes rippled outward. Miguel, ever the supportive husband, noticed Sophia's growing detachment. Dinners that once buzzed with family chatter now felt strained. She'd stare off mid-conversation, her warm eyes glazing over as if listening to distant voices. One evening in November, as the family gathered around their oak dining table for a meal of grilled salmon and quinoa, Sophia's favorite Isabella shared excitedly about a psychology lecture at UCLA on mirror neurons and empathy. "Mom, it's like what you do, reading people's emotions through connection." Sophia nodded absently, but inside Legion stirred, whispering temptations. Use it, expand it, become more. Later that night, as Miguel readied for bed in their master suite with its plush king-size mattress and views of the Hollywood Hills, he found Sophia murmuring in her sleep strange syllables, a mix of English and what sounded like ancient tongues. He shook her gently and she bolted upright, claiming it was just a dream. But the incident lingered, planting seeds of unease. Professionally, the entity's influence pushed boundaries. Sophia began experimenting with unorthodox methods, ones she'd never considered before. In group therapy sessions she started hosting at her office, a new venture to capitalize on demand. She'd guide participants into deep relaxation states, almost hypnotic, encouraging them to share their inner shadows. Unbeknownst to her, this opened micro-portals, allowing fragments of Legion to brush against others. One participant, a young barista with depression, left feeling euphoric but returned days later complaining of intrusive thoughts, voices urging self-doubt. Sophia dismissed it as transference, a common therapeutic phenomenon, but deep down, doubt gnawed. Her own nightmares evolved, no longer just abyssal screams, but visions of historical possessions, medieval villages tormented by plagues of madness, or biblical scenes of the Gerasene man chained among tombs, his body racked by Legion's fury. She'd wake drenched in sweat, reaching for her rosary on the nightstand, but the prayers felt hollow, her faith dimmed by the allure of her gifts. Come winter, as Los Angeles experienced rare rains that turned the streets into slick mirrors reflecting neon signs, the oppression intensified. Sophia's empathy crossed into precognition. She'd anticipate crises before they unfolded. A corporate lawyer client arrived one stormy afternoon, suit rumpled from a red-eye flight, intending to discuss work stress. Before he spoke, Sophia felt a wave. He's planning suicide tonight. She probed gently, uncovering his hidden despair over a failed merger and mounting debts. The man broke down, admitting he'd bought pills that morning. She talked him through it, referring him to a crisis center, and he left grateful. Success? Yes, but at what cost? Each intervention drained her, leaving her with migraines that throbbed like accusations. Miguel insisted on another visit to Dr. Rachel Klein at UCLA Health. Rachel, with her wire-rimmed glasses and stack of diagnostic manuals, ran more tests, EEG scans showing unusual brainwave patterns, spikes in theta activity suggesting altered states. It could be hyperempathy syndrome, she theorized, prescribing stronger meds like selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Sophia took them sporadically, fearing they'd dull her edge. But Legion had no intention of being muted. In a chilling escalation one December evening, during a solo session in her dimly lit office, the rain pattering against the windows like insistent fingers, Sophia treated a veteran with combat PTSD. As he described IED explosions in Iraq, her body seized again. The voices erupted. We remember the sands of old, the wars of angels. This time, Legion revealed more, claiming dominion over chaos since the fall, feeding on human frailty. Through her we multiply, they snarled. Sophia blacked out briefly, coming to with the veteran staring in horror. He bolted, later filing a complaint with the state board, though it was dismissed as his own delusion. Shaken, Sophia confided partially in Miguel, who drove her to St. Charles Borromeo Church the next morning. Father Gonzalez, with his salt and pepper hair and firm handshake, listened in the rectory over coffee. Sounds like burnout, he said initially, but his eyes narrowed at her description of the voices. Have you considered spiritual direction? Sometimes the mind's troubles have deeper roots. Sophia resisted, clinging to science. Yet, as the new year dawned in 2017, her practice boomed while her soul frayed. Patients reported mixed outcomes. Some healed swiftly, others deteriorated subtly, marriages straining, addictions resurfacing. One woman, treated for eating disorders, began hearing whispers post-session, leading to a relapse. Sophia rationalized it as unrelated, but Legion's plan was unfolding, not just possession, but proliferation. It began summoning allies, drawing on infernal hierarchies I've encountered in exorcisms, lesser demons to amplify torment. Enter Asmodeus, the demon of jealousy and destruction from the book of Tobit in the Old Testament. In Scripture, Asmodeus slays Sarah's husbands out of envy, a spirit of division. Through Sophia, it manifested first as intrusive thoughts during family time. One Sunday brunch in January, as the Reyes clan enjoyed pancakes and fresh orange juice squeezed from California groves, Sophia snapped at Isabella over a minor comment about her workload. "You don't understand my mission," she barked, eyes flashing unnaturally. Miguel intervened, but the rift widened. Asmodeus whispered lies. They envy your power. Sacrifice love for greater good. Sophia started skipping family outings, like Lucas's guitar recital at school, claiming emergencies at work. The boy, with his teenage sensitivity, withdrew, strumming sad melodies alone in his room. Professionally, Asmodeus twisted her therapies. In sessions, she'd unwittingly foster jealousy, pitting couples against each other by revealing hidden resentments that inflamed rather than resolved. A married pair seeking counseling left with seeds of doubt sown. "He envies your success," Sophia would say to the wife, echoing Asmodeus's venom. Breakups followed, with Sophia viewing them as necessary liberations. Her bank account swelled savings, hitting 6 figures from bonuses and referrals, but friendships evaporated. Colleagues distanced themselves, whispering about her erratic brilliance. One former mentor emailed urging a sabbatical, but she ignored it. By spring of 2017, the home front cracked. Miguel, after a heated argument in their living room furniture askew from paced frustration, suggested marriage counseling. "You're not yourself, Sophia. This genius is destroying us," she retorted with unnatural coldness. "You don't see the bigger picture. I'm healing the world." Isabella, overhearing, stormed out, later confiding to friends at UCLA that her mom had turned into a monster. Lucas, tearful, asked why she no longer hugged him goodnight. The church became a distant memory. Sophia hadn't attended Mass in months. Her volunteer group disbanded without explanation. Father Gonzalez reached out via phone, sensing trouble from parish gossip. "Come see me, Sophia. Let's pray together." She declined politely, but that night, Asmodeus raged in her dreams, visions of families torn asunder, mirrors cracking to reflect multiplied faces of envy. Waking, she felt a compulsion to destroy a photo album of wedding pictures flung across the floor. Miguel found her sobbing amid the mess, and for the first time she whispered, "Something's inside me." Friends, this phase shows how evil escalates, turning gifts into curses and unity into strife. Legion and Asmodeus weren't content with one soul. They aimed to spread like a virus through human connections. In the coming part, we'll explore the full outbreak of chaos among her patients and the devastating toll on her life. But take heart, as the Psalms remind us, the Lord is a refuge in times of trouble. Cling to prayer, the sacraments, and community. God bless you as we continue. Good evening again, friends. As we press on with this sobering, true account drawn from those confidential deliverance reports out of Los Angeles, we're now entering the heart of the storm, the late months of 2017, stretching into early 2018, where the demonic entities, Legion and Asmodeus, unleashed their full fury. Not content with tormenting Sophia Reyes alone, but radiating outward like poison seeping into groundwater. This phase reveals how spiritual warfare can cascade through communities, turning instruments of healing into vectors of harm. It's a cautionary tale I've reflected on often in my own ministry. When we drift from God's protection, even our noblest intentions can be hijacked by forces from the pit. But let's unfold it carefully, layer by layer, so you can grasp the gravity without losing sight of hope. By mid-autumn, with the Santa Ana winds whipping dry leaves through the streets and carrying that faint scent of wildfires in the air, Sophia's practice had become a vortex of despair disguised as demand. Her schedule was relentless, starting at dawn with virtual sessions for East Coast clients waking to their own demons, then a parade of in-person appointments until the city lights twinkled like false stars outside her window. The influx wasn't just local. People drove from as far as San Diego or flew in from Vegas, lured by testimonials on therapy review sites praising her as a mind whisperer. But beneath the acclaim, Legion's strategy was insidious, using each session as a conduit to disperse its fragments, creating a chain reaction of affliction. Consider the case of a firefighter named Carlos, a burly man in his 40s with tattoos peeking from under his sleeves, who sought help for survivor's guilt after a blaze claimed his partner's life. He slumped into the armchair, voice gravelly as he recounted the flame's roar and the collapse that trapped his friend. Sophia, her empathy now, a demonic amplifier, delved deep. The guilt echoes like screams in the night, doesn't it? In that probe, a sliver of Legion transferred, embedding in his psyche. Carlos left lighter, but soon after, he began self-sabotaging, ignoring safety protocols on the job, picking fights in bars near the station. One night, under the influence, he drove his truck recklessly through Mulholland Drive's curves, nearly plunging off a cliff. Hospitalized with fractures, he ranted to nurses about legions and the fire, words that echoed back to Sophia via a concerned call from his wife. She minimized it, trauma resurfacing, book another appointment. Patterns like this repeated across her caseload. A librarian from Pasadena, treated for chronic loneliness, started isolating further, hearing whispers that everyone despised her, leading to a hoarding spiral that filled her home with trash. A real estate agent, seeking stress relief from the cutthroat market, developed paranoia about colleagues, sabotaging deals, and losing his license. These weren't isolated. By year's end, emergency rooms in West LA noted a spike in admissions from her patients' overdoses, cuttings, even a group delusion where 3 unrelated clients claimed identical visions of abyssal crowds. The Board of Psychology, tipped off by a whistleblower therapist who'd lost referrals to her, launched a formal inquiry, subpoenaing records that showed alarming post-treatment declines. Asmodeus, meanwhile, reveled in relational carnage. This demon, infamous for throttling love in Tobit, twisted Sophia's couple's work into demolition derbies. A session with a young engaged pair from Echo Park, a graphic designer and a barista, began innocently with talks of wedding jitters. But under Asmodeus' sway, Sophia unearthed latent envies. She resents your creativity. He covets your freedom. The couple left in silence, and within weeks, the engagement shattered amid accusations of infidelity that neither could trace back. Similar fractures hit families too. A single dad with custody issues had his bond with his daughter poisoned by planted doubts. She's jealous of your new life. The girl ran away, ending up in foster care briefly. Asmodeus' voice in Sophia's head grew louder. Break the chains of false love. True freedom lies in solitude. This venom turned inward with devastating precision. By Thanksgiving, which the Reyes family skipped for the first time, opting for separate frozen dinners amid awkward silence, the cracks had become chasms. Miguel, juggling his pediatric practice where he soothed colicky babies with the same tenderness he once showed Sophia, reached breaking point. One crisp November morning, as fog hugged the Hollywood Hills visible from their balcony, he packed a suitcase while the kids were at school. "I can't watch you destroy everything we built," he said, voice steady but eyes wet. Sophia, lounging in a robe, stained with coffee spills, sneered. "Go then, you're holding me back from my purpose." Asmodeus fueled the barb, twisting her love into contempt. Miguel moved to a modest apartment in Burbank, closer to his clinic, taking Lucas on weekends. The boy, now withdrawn and skipping guitar lessons, confided in his dad during a drive along the freeway. "Mom talks to herself at night, Dad. Scary stuff, like angry crowds." Miguel nodded, heart aching, and began attending daily mass at a nearby parish for solace. Isabella's fallout was explosive. The once eager UCLA student, now crashing on a friend's couch in Westwood, confronted Sophia over a tense lunch at a cafe on Westwood Boulevard. Amid clinking silverware and chatter, Isabella slammed her fork down. "You've become obsessed, Mom, dropping out because I can't think straight. Your mission is killing us." Sophia, eyes flashing with demonic ire, accused her of ingratitude. "Jealous of my impact? Go chase your little degree." Isabella cut contact for months, working as a barista to fund therapy of her own, where she unpacked the monster her mother had become. The pain-etched lines on her young face, a mirror of Sophia's own erosion. Physically and emotionally, Sophia crumbled under the weight, her once vibrant frame thinned to frailty, cheekbones sharp, clothes hanging loose after losing another 15 pounds. Migraines confined her to darkened rooms where she'd curl on the floor, assailed by visions, patients' faces morphing into demonic grins, families splintering like glass underfoot. Alcohol became her crutch nights, blurred with glasses of Merlot from Napa Valley vineyards, sipped alone while scrolling patient emails, begging for more sessions despite worsening symptoms. Friends vanished like smoke. A church acquaintance who'd volunteered with her tried one last outreach via text. "Sophia, come back to us." Deleted unread, courtesy of Asmodeus' isolation tactics. The professional pinnacle masked the abyss. Revenue hit 7 figures that year, enough for luxury indulgences, a spa day here, designer handbags there, but it rang hollow. Suicides mounted. A tech worker hanged himself after a session amplified his imposter syndrome into fatal despair. Brawls erupted. One patient stabbed a co-worker, claiming voices commanded it. Media whispers began local news segments on a therapy epidemic without naming her, but the board's net tightened. Subpoenas arrived by certified mail, demanding explanations for the pattern of harm. In her isolation, glimmers of resistance flickered. One stormy December night, rain lashing the windows like judgments, Sophia stumbled upon her old Bible in a drawer, dust-coated from neglect. Flipping to Tobit, she read of Asmodeus' defeat by Archangel Raphael through prayer, fasting, and fish gall symbolism. A sob escaped. For a moment, Legion recoiled. But the entities surged back, driving her to smash the book against the wall. Exhausted, she collapsed, whispering pleas to an empty room. Father Gonzalez, kept abreast by Miguel's updates, intensified his intercessions. From the church altar during Advent services, He'd pray subtly for those oppressed by unseen forces, his baritone voice carrying conviction born from prior skirmishes with the demonic in LA's underbelly. He assembled a small team, fellow priests versed in deliverance, not full exorcisms yet, but preparatory rites. We wait for her, cry for help, he told Miguel over phone, but God is already at work. As 2018 dawned with fireworks over the city, Sophia's world teetered. A class action lawsuit loomed from affected families, headlines teasing therapist under fire. Her license hung by a thread. Practice doors shuttered temporarily amid scrutiny. Alone in the echoing home, bottle in hand, she hit rock bottom. A deliberate overdose in the master bath, pills scattered like accusations. Waking in Cedars Sinai Medical Center to IV drips and monitors, tubes snaking her arms, she faced the wreckage. A Catholic chaplain, alerted by her faint faith notation and records visited, God hasn't abandoned you. Tears flowed. She requested Father Gonzalez. He arrived promptly, rosary beads clicking softly. Seated by her bed amid the hum of hospital life, he listened to her halting confession. The transfers, the summons, the ruin wrought. Father, I've spread hell on earth, she wept. With pastoral wisdom, he affirmed, demons lie, but Christ conquers. This is possession, Sophia supernatural, not just sickness. He began anointing her forehead with holy oil, invoking protection, as nurses respectfully stepped out. Friends, this crescendo of chaos underscores evil's endgame, total isolation, where even success tastes like ash. Yet, in the depths, God's mercy calls. In our final segments, we'll witness the battle's climax and redemption's dawn. As Proverbs 3 reminds us, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding. Stay rooted in prayer in the church. Victory awaits the faithful. God bless you as we near the end. By early 2018, with the California winter rains giving way to tentative spring blooms along the boulevards, Sophia Reyes found herself in the sterile confines of that hospital room, tubes and monitors beeping like somber sentinels. Her attempted suicide had left her with lingering weakness, a fractured wrist from the fall, bruised ribs, and a soul-scarred weariness that no medication could touch. Father Gonzalez's initial visit marked a turning point, his presence a beacon in the fog of her despair. With his weathered hands clasping hers, he didn't judge. Instead, he spoke of God's infinite mercy, drawing from stories of biblical outcasts, redeemed the prodigal son, the woman at the well. Evil thrives in secrecy, he said softly, but light scatters it. Let's bring this to the church. Discharged after a week under observation, Sophia returned to her now echoing home on Sunset Boulevard, the once vibrant space feeling like a tomb. Furniture gathered dust, family photos stared accusingly from walls, and the silence amplified her inner turmoil. Legion and Asmodeus, sensing vulnerability, lashed out with renewed vigor. Hallucinations of shadowy figures lurking in corners, whispers urging another end. She barricaded herself in the bedroom, surviving on delivery meals, simple salads from local spots, untouched half the time, and endless cups of black coffee to stave off sleep's terrors. Miguel, informed by the hospital, checked in via cautious text, offering to bring groceries but respecting the legal separation papers that now formalize their divide. I'm praying for you, he'd write, attaching photos of Lucas at a school concert. The boy's smile, a dagger to her heart. The lawsuits escalated swiftly. By March, a coalition of former patients' families filed in Los Angeles County Superior Court alleging malpractice that led to suicides, assaults, and breakdowns. Headlines in the LA Times skirted names but painted a grim picture: therapy, guru faces, reckoning amid patient tragedies. Sophia's attorney, a sharp-suited woman from a downtown firm, advised settling out of court, but funds dwindled fast legal fees, eating into her savings like termites. The California Board of Psychology revoked her license after a hearing in Sacramento, citing unethical practices and failure to report self-harm risks. Her office lease terminated, equipment sold at auction for pennies on the dollar. Colleagues who'd once praised her now shunned calls. One sent a terse email: "You cross lines no healer should." Isolation wrapped around her like chains. Asmodeus's specialty whispering that she deserved abandonment, that her gifts had been illusions leading to ruin. Family wounds festered. Isabella, rebuilding at UCLA with a part-time job at a campus bookstore, sent a single letter via mail. I love who you were, Mom, but this version sold her soul. Prove me wrong. It arrived on a sunny April day, the envelope's weight heavy in Sophia's trembling hands. Lucas, during a supervised visit at a neutral park in Griffith Observatory's shadow, clung to Miguel but glanced at her with wide eyes. Why do you look so sad all the time? His question unleashed sobs. She hugged him briefly. Feeling Legion recoil at the pure affection, Miguel, ever compassionate, suggested reconciliation counseling through the church, but Sophia demurred, fearing exposure. Nights alone, she'd pace the living room, arguing aloud with the entities. Leave me, only to hear mocking choruses. You invited us, now we feast. Father Gonzalez orchestrated the response with quiet determination. Drawing from his experience with troubled souls in LA's immigrant communities, cases of oppression tied to generational curses or occult dabblings, he convened a team at St. Charles Borromeo. This included 2 assistant priests, one a young Dominican with studies in spiritual warfare, and a lay intercessor trained in healing prayer. They met in the church basement, a modest space with folding chairs, crucifixes on walls, and the faint scent of incense lingering from upstairs masses. Over herbal tea and shared Bibles, they reviewed Sophia's confessions, the transfer from Victor, Legion's multiplicity, Asmodeus's divisive strikes. This is classic infestation leading to possession, Gonzalez declared, referencing church guidelines from the rite of exorcism. Not a Hollywood spectacle, but a solemn process requiring the bishop's approval, which he secured via discreet channels. Initial sessions began in May, held in the church's quiet chapel after hours, candles flickering on the altar like vigilant guardians. Sophia arrived, shrouded in a hoodie, her long hair unkempt, eyes hollow from insomnia. The team encircled her, rosaries in hand, invoking the Holy Spirit with chants from the Liturgy of the Hours. Gonzalez anointed her with chrism oil, tracing the cross on her forehead while commanding, in the name of Jesus Christ, reveal yourselves. Legion manifested fiercely, Sophia's body contorting voices, overlapping in guttural tones. She is ours by right, her empathy was the key. Asmodeus added sneers. Love is a lie, we shatter it eternally. The priest sprinkled holy water, reciting Psalms 91. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. Sophia writhed, sweating profusely, but glimpses of relief emerged, brief moments where her own voice broke through. Help me, Father. These encounters stretched over weeks, interspersed with fasting and confession. Sophia confessed sins amplified by the demons. Pride in her genius, neglect of family, the unwitting spread of harm. Absolution brought tears. Sacraments fortified her. Miguel attended one session peripherally, praying from the pews, his presence a silent olive branch. The entities resisted, inducing physical ailments, nausea during prayers, unexplained bruises like stigmata of the damned. One intense night in June, under a full moon casting silver through stained glass windows, Legion roared, "We number thousands, you cannot banish us all." Gonzalez, unflinching, brandished a relic, a fragment from St. Michael's shrine, commanding, "By the power of the archangel, depart." Winds howled unnaturally within the chapel, papers scattering, but Sophia gasped free for hours afterward. By midsummer, as heat waves baked the city and tourists flocked to beaches, the battles culminated. Sophia, emaciated but resolute, committed to daily Eucharist, her faith rekindling like embers fanned. The final rite occurred on a sweltering August evening. The team assembled in full vestments, incense curled heavenward, Latin invocations filled the air. As prayers peaked, Legion and Asmodeus unleashed a torrent, Sophia's form levitating slightly, eyes rolling white, voices bellowing ancient curses. "We claim her for the abyss," they thundered. But Sophia, drawing from inner strength, cried, "No, Jesus is my healer." The entities faltered, Asmodeus dissolved first in a hiss of envy unfulfilled. Legion fragmented, a cold gust sweeping the room as they fled. Sophia collapsed, unconscious but breathing steadily. The oppression lifted like a veil torn away. Waking in the rectory guest room hours later, surrounded by the team, she wept cathartically. I transferred evil thinking it was cure. Forgive me. Gonzalez blessed her anew. God already has. Now, rebuild. The rite's remnants, holy water vials, prayer books were burned in a controlled fire behind the church. Ashes scattered as symbol of finality. Redemption unfolded gradually from there, spanning the years to 2026. Sophia, license gone, but spirit renewed, volunteered at shelters for trauma survivors, offering faith-based listening without charge. She donated remaining assets to mental health charities, funding scholarships for ethical therapists. Samhoy deepened her humility. Letters of apology to affected families brought some closure, though scars lingered. Miguel, witnessing her transformation during joint prayers, initiated reconciliation counseling sessions at the church, leading to annulment reversal by 2019. They remarried quietly in the same chapel, vows renewed with deeper gravity. Isabella, graduating UCLA with honors in psychology, forgave over coffee dates, collaborating on an anonymous memoir chapter about boundaries and healing. Lucas, blossoming into a young adult musician, gigging at local venues, found solace in her steady presence, their hugs mending old fears. By 2026, Sophia served as an ethical advisor for church counseling programs, sharing her story in closed seminars for young clergy and therapists. Ambition without God invites darkness, she'd warn, holding an old journal as talisman pages, filled with reflections on true healing from divine sources, not shadowy connections. The tale circulated quietly in LA's faith circles, a modern parable echoing the Gerasene deliverance, evil's defeat through persistent prayer. Friends, this concludes our journey through Sophia's ordeal, a testament that no pit is too deep for God's reach. In my ministry, I've seen similar victories. They affirm Ephesians 6's armor of faith. As we wrap, remember, stay vigilant against subtle incursions, nurture your relationship with Christ, and seek the church in trials. Evil may rage, but love conquers all. God bless you abundantly. Though we've reached the pinnacle of Sophia Reyes's deliverance in that sweltering August rite, where Legion and Asmodeus were cast out through the unyielding power of prayer and faith, the story doesn't end with a single dramatic expulsion. In my experience as a priest confronting the demonic across Indiana and beyond, true healing unfolds in the quiet aftermath, the slow mending of shattered lives, the rebuilding of trust in God's providence, and the vigilant guarding against evil's subtle returns. This final chapter, spanning from the immediate wake of 2018 through to 2026, illuminates how Sophia transformed her scars into testimonies, serving as a living reminder that redemption isn't a momentary flash, but a lifelong pilgrimage. Let's walk through it together, drawing lessons from the embers of her renewal. Awakening in the church rectory that fateful night, Sophia felt an unfamiliar lightness, as if a crushing weight had lifted from her chest. The room, simple with its wooden cross on the wall and a single lamp casting a warm glow, smelled of lingering incense and fresh linens. Father Gonzalez sat nearby, Bible open to Romans chapter 8. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, will be able to separate us from the love of God. His words, delivered with that steady conviction honed from years shepherding souls in Los Angeles' diverse parishes, grounded her. You've been freed, Sophia, he said, but freedom requires stewardship. Confess daily, pray without ceasing, and serve others to fortify your spirit. She nodded, tears streaming, her first unburdened breath in years tasting like hope. The initial days post-exorcism were a delicate balance of rest and reflection. Sophia stayed at a parish retreat house in the San Gabriel Mountains, a serene spot with hiking trails winding through oak groves and vistas overlooking the smoggy basin below. Here, away from the city's clamor, she journaled relentlessly, pages filled with raw accounts of her possession. The seductive whispers of power, the divisive barbs that fractured her family, the unwitting harm to patients. I thought empathy was my weapon, she wrote one crisp morning, birdsong filtering through the window, but without Christ, it became a gateway for hell. Daily Mass became her anchor, the Eucharist, a tangible reminder of divine sustenance. Father Gonzalez visited weekly, guiding her through spiritual exercises from St. Ignatius' Discernment of Spirits, examining how Legion had exploited her ambitions. Physically, recovery lagged, the overdose's toll lingered, chronic fatigue that made simple walks exhausting, tremors in her hands from neurological strain. Doctors at a local clinic prescribed physical therapy, gentle stretches in a gym overlooking the foothills, building strength one session at a time. Emotionally, waves of guilt crashed, flashbacks to patients' downfalls, like the tech worker's suicide note echoing in her mind. To combat this, she began anonymous outreach letters sent via the church to affected families, expressing sorrow without details that could reopen wounds. Some responded with forgiveness, others silence. Healing is an ode, Gonzalez counseled during a trail walk, the crunch of leaves underfoot punctuating his wisdom. Offer it to God, let him multiply it. Reintegration with family started tentatively. Miguel, still in his Burbank apartment with its minimalist decor and pediatric charts scattered on the coffee table, received her first call in months. "I miss us," she said simply, voice cracking over the line. He paused, then, "Let's start with coffee." Their meeting at a quiet diner off Ventura Boulevard was awkward yet poignant, sipping lattes amid the hum of morning commuters, sharing halting apologies. "I saw the darkness in you," he admitted, stirring sugar absent-mindedly, "but I fled instead of fighting." Sophia detailed the possession, sparing graphic horrors but emphasizing her renewed faith. Miguel, touched, suggested joint prayer sessions at the church. By fall, Lucas joined awkward hugs evolving into game nights at the old home, where he'd strum original songs about forgiveness on his guitar, melodies carrying hints of healing. Isabella proved tougher. From her Westwood apartment, cluttered with psych textbooks and takeout containers, she initially rebuffed overtures. A breakthrough came via a mediated church meeting in October, Gonzalez facilitating in a neutral parlor scented with fresh flowers. "You abandoned us for ghosts," Isabella accused, arms crossed. Sophia, humbled, replied, "I did, and it nearly destroyed me. But God's rebuilding what I broke." Tears flowed, embraces followed. Isabella resumed studies, channeling pain into a thesis on ethical empathy and therapy, consulting Sophia sparingly at first, then collaboratively. By 2019, family dinners resumed, simple meals like Miguel's homemade paella, laughter echoing as Lucas joked about his band gigs. Professionally, Sophia pivoted from loss to purpose. Barred from licensed practice, she volunteered at a downtown shelter for homeless veterans, facilitating support groups, blending active listening with scripture. Pain isn't just psychological. She'd share in circles under fluorescent lights, participants nodding from folding chairs. It's spiritual warfare. Arm yourselves with prayer. Donations from her depleted savings funded resources, books on resilience, even a small library corner. By 2020, amid the global pandemic's isolation, she adapted to virtual sessions via church Zoom, guiding quarantined souls through anxiety with psalms and breathing exercises. COVID unmasked our vulnerabilities, she reflected in a journal entry, masks piled nearby, just as Legion unmasked mine. As years progressed, her role expanded. In 2021, Father Gonzalez invited her to co-lead workshops for diocesan counselor sessions in parish halls on recognizing demonic oppression versus mental illness. Signs include aversion to holy objects, unnatural knowledge, superhuman strength, she'd explain, drawing from her ordeal without sensationalism. Attendees, from wide-eyed seminarians to seasoned therapists, absorbed her cautions. Empathy opens doors, seal them with sacraments. Miguel supported, attending as a medical voice, discussing overlaps between pediatrics and spiritual health. Lucas, maturing into a college freshman studying music production at a local community college, composed soundtracks for church videos on Deliverance, his tracks blending rock with Gregorian chants. Reconciliation with Miguel deepened organically. By 2022, after months of dating like newlyweds walks along Venice Beach at sunset, waves crashing as they discuss dreams, they remarried in an intimate ceremony at St. Charles Borromeo. The chapel, adorned with white lilies, hosted family and a few trusted friends, vows renewed. In sickness and possession for better or deliverance. Honeymoon, a quiet retreat in Big Sur, redwoods towering as they prayed together, fortifying their bond. Isabella served as maid of honor, her speech toasting second chances from above. Into 2023 and beyond, Sophia's influence rippled wider. She advised on a confidential basis for the Archdiocese's exorcism team, reviewing cases with Gonzalez's successors, discerning patterns like those in her story. One involved a young actor haunted post-audition trauma. Her insights prevented escalation. Personally, she maintained disciplines, weekly confession, monthly retreats, a home altar with relics from the rite. Lucas's career took off a record deal in 2024. His album Echoes of Light, dedicating tracks to her resilience. Isabella, now a licensed therapist in her own right, co-authored articles on faith-integrated psychology, crediting her mother's journey. By 2026, Sophia gray streaks in her hair, but eyes radiant, embodied quiet authority. As a keynote at a national Catholic mental health conference in San Francisco, she shared excerpts, "I once chased healing through human means, inviting chaos. Now I point to the divine physician." Applause followed, questions poured in. Back in LA, her journal, bound and worn, sat on a shelf, a private chronicle passed to Isabella as legacy. True cure flows from Christ. Its final entry read, "Not dark alliances." Friends, reflecting on this as I do on my own cases like the Indiana family oppressed by ancestral curses, freed through similar rites, reminds us, evil persists, but so does grace. Sophia's path echoes the Samaritan woman's transformation from broken vessel to evangelist. In today's world, with mental health crises surging and spiritual voids widening, heed her warning. Guard your empathy with prayer, anchor ambitions in humility. As I close this tale, recall 1 Peter 5. Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, but the God of all grace will himself restore you. Live in that promise. Thank you for journeying with me. May God's peace guard your hearts. God bless you all.